What pushed you guys to make that first plunge, to have a blank page in front of you? What was it, if there is anything?
Well, for me, I loved writing as a kid. I was one of those people that, like, when I was a child, I remember asking for, I'm 38, so when I was like 9, I remember asking for an electric typewriter for Christmas, because it was so weird. And I got one, and it was a thing, and I wrote really weird, dramatic stuff. And I wrote really weird, dramatic stuff as a teenager. Like, I tried the whole, like, really dark poetry thing, and I'm not good at it. And I was a counselor in my 20s, and when I got pregnant with my first, I've been writing throughout that time, but I'd always been like, someday I'll write a book, but that'll be when I'm way, in the future. And for me, I realized what a cop-out that was. I'll do it someday when I'm less freaked out about that whole thing and rejection and everyone's saying, you're a fraud, who are you? So really, that was such a motivator. It was one of those, like, I'm pregnant, my life is happening now, and let's do this. So I'd had ideas, and I'm like, I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna start. And nobody has to see it. And that's a great thing, right? The first thing you write, no one has to see it, you can burn it. That's whatever. That's what I just wrote. No, I didn't burn it, but I wrote it, and I'm like, nobody has to see this. I'm just gonna keep working on this, and that really was. And really, it was just not waiting for some magical muse. It was exercising that muscle. And it's funny, right? You're like, oh, I guess I'm a writer now. Yeah. Like, for real.
Because you wrote something, right?
Right. All right.
I was the same way. I was as a kid, like, I remember, like, before I could even, like, actually read, I would get pieces of paper and staple them together and draw the pictures, and then go to one of my parents and tell them, this is what this page needs to say, and I would make my own books, like 4. And so, I've always wanted to do that. I got sidetracked a little bit, in college and stuff, because, what I write mostly in the science fiction, fantasy, horror, it used to be that you needed to write short stories first to break into that. And that was the advice that I was still getting, even though that was really more for, like, the golden age of the science fiction and fantasy magazines in the 50s and 60s. Not really applicable now. And then so I trying to write short stories, tried to submit them, wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't very good at writing short stories because for some reason the format didn't work for me. Somewhere I read, I finally read someone that said, that's not good advice anymore. Don't do that. If you want to write a novel, write a novel. And I started writing a novel, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I had room to, like, really develop the ideas that I wanted to write about. And a year later, I had a manuscript, and it wasn't very good. But I took some time to edit it and revise it and everything to the point where, I really believed in it.
Did you guys, like, when you started writing, was it a conscious choice to go in the genre that you went? Or was it a strategic choice, or how did that decision making happen?
Well, you all heard my story. I kind of just fell back into my genre, totally by accident. But one thing that I just loved about starting, to write about being a mom was I started to realize, like, how hard it was and how I didn't always like it, and I really struggled with it. And I learned very quickly that I had to be honest, because nobody wants to pick up their Sunday paper and hear about somebody who's like this great mom and has it all together. And so I made a conscious decision that I was going to be honest about the imperfection of motherhood, because at the time I just was so overwhelmed. I felt like as women we're trying to have it all and be it all and do it all, and look good doing it. And it was just never going to be perfect. And I was like, I'm just going to put that out there and say, hey, you know what? It's really hard what we do as parents. Can we just, like, have a laugh about it? And that just sort of worked. And I enjoyed, like, kind of finding my voice as a mom and a wife through that process, and just finding a place where I could be honest about the imperfection of being a mom.
Similar to these guys, I was always a writer. I had my magic diary when I was little, and I was that student that loved research papers. But how I got started on my book is I had this life-changing experience. I Googled, I was disconnected from my biological father, found him on Google search 20 years later,
Wow.
and flew down to where he was and met 2 brothers and a sister that I didn't know I had. So I came back and started what started out as a memoir.
Wow.
And 7 years later, I had a book in hand. a lot of drafts, but
Yeah.
I'm happy with the final product.
That's awesome.
I think reality is boring.
No offense taken.
That's why I write fantasy, and I think things would be much more interesting if we had ghosts and magic and
Vampires.
Vampires.
Okay.
It's the stuff I already enjoy, and I am a weirdo, anyways, so it's like, sure, but I didn't seek that out. I wasn't thinking, okay, I think this is gonna do really well, so I'll write this kind of thing. I really believe in writing what you want to write about.
Kind of technical in how you write. Do you guys find that you plot out and then go by the book through the plotting out, or is it free-form? And what does that back end look like to you, if there is one?
I started chronological,
Okay.
and then went in and I read a lot of books to how to, I've never written a book before, right? So I read a lot of books as to how to bridge stories and how to do flashbacks and things like that. So after it was written, like everything, brain vomit out, words,
Right.
then go in and clean it up.
So you talk about pantsers and plotters,
Right.
right? And I'm more on the side of by the seat of my pants, but that requires so much editing. For me, it does. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I gotta clean this up because that's crazy right here, and this is, makes no sense. Okay, now that's great, whatever. So it's funny, right? I'm working on being a little more outliney.
Okay.
I'm making it up, I'm artistic.
Outline is great.
Series, that's my next book. I'm releasing another standalone on Black Friday after Thanksgiving, and I keep writing standalone because my books keep having endings, and I'm like, okay, well, I've got a series I want to write. I probably should get a little crisper, a little clearer about outlining, just so I don't have to do as much work on the back end. It's really laziness that's motivating me to be more plotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm we were just talking about it. I'm way on the extreme end of pantsing. I cannot. If I try to write a plot, if I try to write an outline, it kills the book for me. I mean, I can't. And usually I don't, because I'll know the beginning and I know the ending, and I may know a few scenes in the middle that I want to do. But getting from A to B to C is the part that doesn't come to me until I start writing. I have to write the first scene. Usually the second scene doesn't come to me until I'm writing the first scene. And then I can, it's like I forget who said it, but it's like driving at night. You can only see as far as the headlights go, but you can make the whole journey that way.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
So that's just kind of how my brain works.
I love this topic because Kimmery, who wrote Queen of Hearts, she literally sat at my kitchen table. I remember the day she started the book, and she opened her laptop. She doesn't know how to type. She never learned because she didn't want people to ask her to type papers in college. She opened her laptop and with 2 fingers just started writing her book. No idea, what it was about, where it was going, who the characters were, just 2 fingers. Okay, and there's me. Total outline person. Outlines, Excel spreadsheets, storyboard. It looks like NASA. Okay? And so and the reason for that was, so when I did the column, I always had an idea, okay, Colton missed the school bus today. I'm gonna write a column about that. And I would sit down and I could just go, 470 words. I don't know how it always ended up being 470 words. I'm doing it 10 years. I could just do that. With the novel, I wanted to understand how to write a book, because that's totally different than writing a weekly column, and I had no idea how to do it. And when I pitched the idea to an agent, the first thing they said was, we think this would make a great screenplay, which is what I've always wanted to do, is write a screenplay. And so I wanted to understand screenplay structure. So if you're interested in that, Blake Snyder has written a great book called Save the Cat, and it shows you how to build the perfect story arc. And it was sort of my way of making sure I hit my plot points and that I built tension and had everything fall apart and then had the resolution. One thing I did realize, to your point, is when you start planning like that, then you're trying to write to this, you've got to make sure you get to this and this and this. And then I heard someone say at the conference, if you know how your book ends, then you're not doing your job. And I was like, that's a really good point, because I am stifling myself by knowing how it ends. And so I stopped after the midpoint of the book plotting, and now some really cool things are happening. I have 2 new characters that I don't know where they came from. So I think it's okay to sort of know where you're going, but I totally agree now, after being like a avid rabbit plotter, there is something to just sort of, just letting your brain kind of run wild.
Yeah, I'm a pantser, my co-author's a plotter, and I have no idea how that works. I know it drives him insane. It's still fun. It's like, it just happened, Casey. I'm sorry. It just happened. So what roadblocks have you guys encountered along the way? Whether that's a specific project or whether that's getting your book published, like what roadblocks have you guys hit in your journey, and how'd you overcome them or get through them?
You know, the advice we just talked about, it's like write what you want to write, and that's the advice that all new writers get. And it's good advice. You know, that's advice that I would recommend. Don't chase trends, but publishers chase trends. And when I was writing, you know, I mean, that first trilogy, it's a vampire trilogy. It's a lot of it's not a romance, but it's historical, but it's vampires. And when I was coming along trying to get it published, that was like the tail end of the vampire trend. Agents, what I found is, you know, I was getting a lot of very good positive feedback on my writing, but agents weren't interested in the books because it was about vampires. Never mind that it wasn't the same as all the other vampire books.
They weren't sparkly vampires.
They weren't sparkly.
Yeah.
I don't want to name them.
Yeah,
But you know, and then kind of what pushed me into wanting to do it myself was I read an article. It was 3 agents that were being interviewed. They were young adult agents mostly that they represented, but the interviewer asked them, what's the next big trend in young adult fiction? And one of them, and I remember the quote, he goes, speculative young adult is so over, is what he said. And you know, it was about the time that John Green's Fault in Our Stars came out. Not that I have anything against John Green as a person or writer, so don't take that away. But that kind of made me mad, because I was like, all those people that want to read about ghosts and werewolves and witches and vampires, they didn't go away. They're still there. You know, they didn't wake up someday and go, I want to read about kids dying of cancer. They didn't do that. Again, nothing against John Green. So, but you know, so I'm like, okay, well, if the big publishers aren't writing or aren't making those stories, then, you know, I have stories that those people will still want to read. And even if there aren't as many people wanting to read that, I don't have to pay rent on office space in Midtown Manhattan. So, you know, I don't have to sell as many to be successful as someone might. So that was kind of my big obstacle to kind of push me into doing it independently, was, you know, because I didn't have success finding an agent, and you know, I really believed in those books. I didn't want to just put them in a drawer. So
That's awesome.
So for me, and thank you for saying that, I think that's so right on. It's like there's readers for every, you know, especially as an indie author, there's a lot of indie authors out there that are very successful that, you know, you probably haven't heard of, but their readers have. Their readers love what they write. It might be some, you know, cowboy, Dracula, mad scientist, that genre, and those readers love the cowboy, mad scientist, Dracula genre. You know what I mean? Like, they love those specific books. And sometimes people will just sort of know of these, you know, major name authors, and they'll think it's either, okay, so you're here or you're there, and it's like, no, there's so many different ways to be a successful author. There's so many ways to do that. For me, it was attitude. That was the thing that I really had to adjust for myself, and I think just that insecurity, that imposter syndrome, that like something to prove or looking for that validation. And I really had to get over that. You know, I really had to just get over that. And know that if I was producing something that I was proud of and that my readers were loving, that's that's what I need to do. Like, that's my job. My first novel was published by a small press out of Colorado, and I'm really grateful for that experience. But also going independent, self-publishing, I had to let go of the, okay, I need this, major publisher or this agent to prove that what I do is worthy of your reading.
Right.
I really had to let go of that because that's not true. And there's nothing against traditional publishing. That's something there's a place for everybody and all of that. But that's what I had to get over myself. I had to get over whatever that was in my head and just go, you produce what you love, and if readers are loving it, then here you go.
What was, just for your first book, what was the financial investment? What did that look like to you? Was it, you don't have to go into like specific numbers, like I'm still in debt to this day, don't go there. But I mean, what did it look for you guys to start out? And what resources did you have or wish you had?
This is where I made my biggest mistakes. Because I really didn't know what I was doing to begin with, it was no surprise that I tried to stumble my way through self-publishing. And the biggest advice I could give to anyone is if you're gonna do it by yourself, and I wanted to do it by myself, research the whole process and understand where all of the costs are. I remember someone in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg newsroom saying, oh, well, you can just, upload your manuscript and spit out a book this weekend. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that. And I had no idea. I hadn't even considered every part of a book. I wasn't thinking about ISBN numbers and barcodes and jacket covers, and all of those things cost money. I mean, where do you buy an ISBN number? I mean, they're not CVS. I mean, I didn't know anything, but I started the process without knowing anything. So I was paying too much for a copy editor. I was being charged for things that I hadn't thought of. I didn't have a tax ID number, so when I ordered my books, I had to pay tax on it. I didn't allow for enough time for printing and shipping for when I had my big book party, so I had to rush my shipment, which was hundreds of dollars. Printing a hardback book is so much more expensive than printing a paperback book. And my second husband is here, and I didn't get divorced because of this, but I'm sure that my first husband was watching this money go out, so you'll be glad to know you were spared all of this. But I mean, hand over fist, and it was only because I hadn't done my research. The interesting thing is before I started to do this, and I did it through Ingram Spark, and I hope you'll look at my books, the quality is amazing, and I loved how they turned out. But originally I had met with Warren Publishing, and they had told me how much it would cost to do my book, do all of it. And I can't remember the number, but let me just throw out $6,000. It sounded like so much money. But they would have done everything, and I promise you, in the end, I spent more than that. And so I would just, if I had it to do over, I probably would have sought out who was your publisher? Spark. So Spark Publication or Warren or someone locally. Maybe even done a Book Baby, bookbaby.com. They just do it all, and you just write them a check, and you get 100% of the proceeds. But if you're gonna do it by yourself through CreateSpace or Ingram, just do your homework and create a budget, because it's more money than you think it's gonna be. I remember getting a call from Sally Brewster at Park Road Books, and she said, Tracy, I've done the math on this. Every time we sell one of your books, it costs you 50 cents. That is the last thing you wanna hear. So just do your homework before you start.
My publisher is Warren Publishing, but one of the lessons around marketing that I had to learn is take it seriously. Your author life is a business. And what I did is, and I got this information before, and I, like many other writers, I'm sure in the room can relate, I have about 15 active notebooks depending on what bag I'm carrying that day. And so I would read articles and do my research on marketing tips and things to take away and how I wanted to do it, but I would write it down in all these different notebooks. So the one thing that I would do differently is, and what I'm working on now, is have a marketing plan, actually type out, figure out, envision where you want to be and what you want to do, and write out the action steps that are going to take you to that point.
Which is, to your point, another advantage of partner publishing. people, my kids, they go, Mommy, are you famous? I'm like, only in the Harris Teeter. You know, because I have not been able to get my book outside of Charlotte. And that's my biggest regret. I'm terrible on social media because I'm 52 and I kind of miss that. I'm still trying to learn Instagram and all that. But, you know, unless you really are savvy, you know, on social media and you really are willing to drive, you know, all over the Southeast, your book's just not going to make it outside of, you know, in my case, a 15-mile radius. I do a lot of speaking and I sell my books there, but if you really want to get your book out into the world, you have to have someone that can help you with your distribution and marketing.
A lot of things that were really cost a lot maybe 10 years ago was free on the internet. Like, my covers are all made on Canva.com, you know, and you know, so it's just a matter of like doing your research and figuring out what works and where your skill set is and talent is. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to give us one phrase or one sentence that would encourage anybody in the room who's thinking about writing or has a manuscript and just need some encouragement or guidance from you all.
If I can do it, you can do it.
I'll say ditto.
Get out of your own way.
That's good.
Be willing to make mistakes. Be willing to learn.
You're gonna regret the stuff you did, maybe you're never gonna regret the stuff you did.
Well, guys, let's give our panel a hand.